to address the egregious human rights violations of North Korea, as it's being touted, you know, always forgetting about our own egregious human rights violations in the United States. 2.2 million people in prison, most of them black and brown, and of course committing illegal wars, killing hundreds of thousands of people, all in violation of international law, violating human rights everywhere. So here we are, again, Congress appropriating money to begin a worldwide propaganda campaign to further demonize the North Koreans, singling out the North Koreans in order to justify some new belligerent diplomacy, enabling us to feel more confident that we can take a tough position with the North. And the next meeting of this Freedom House is in Brussels, in Europe. And so the unification people, the reunification people, the Korean Truth Commission in the United States, of which I've been an advisor, is involved in this. But the Korea Truth Commission office in Korea, along with the largest reunification organization in Korea, I don't know the name of it, North-South, they are planning a counter-conference in Brussels at the same time, later this month in March. And so I am hoping and wishing that this conference in Brussels, being conducted by the people from Korea and perhaps other places that support the Koreans' reunification efforts, will be able to counter the propaganda that's going to come out of this National Endowment for Democracy funded, Freedom House sponsored campaign to focus on North Korean human rights violations without talking about the context of Korea, without talking about the fact that we have not signed a peace agreement with Korea, which is what they've been asking for 50 years, 53 years. It's kind of like we let Korea, we always have Korea as a bogeyman. If nothing else is cooking around the world, we can always pick on North Korea, which enables us to keep up our military posturing, it keeps up our military budget, promotes the military-industrial complex. It's like Cuba, you know. We always have some bogeymen that can enable us to have this Pavlovian dog effect on the American population, that we will just roll over and say, okay, communism, people are evil, here and here and here. And so the National Endowment for Democracy, which was created in the 80s under Reagan, took over a lot of the CIA functions of intervening with the democratic process in other countries. It's now funded openly by Congress, and it goes to both Democratic and Republican quote-unquote NGOs that basically intervene in election processes, create propaganda that relate to political processes in different countries, and this Freedom House is a recipient. This Freedom House in New York is a recipient of this money. So I, as a U.S. citizen, want to be, by the way, I'm an independent citizen. I'm not affiliated with any organization for purposes of my Korea work. I'm a member of Veterans for Peace, but I'm not representing them. I'm representing my own independent interest in Korea in terms of this interview. So I really am in total support of this effort of the reunification people to be able to counter this effort by the Bush administration, but it doesn't really matter which administration. It's just that the Bush administration is now adamant to get a handle on North Korea. So I hope that this conference in Brussels is able to show to the people in Europe, to show the people at Freedom House, to show some of the movement people in this country that perhaps have been convinced that they should support this Freedom House effort to carry out this informational campaign, which is very biased against North Korea without understanding the historical context in which North Korea history exists, and the people's minds have been shaped by this history that has been so tragically imposed upon them. I'm hoping that this reunification effort will show that if the United States were to sign a peace agreement, that itself would be a dramatic change in relieving the North Koreans' minds that they're not going to be invaded again, they're not going to be bombed again. And with this new buildup in the south, south of Seoul, this new complex of military bases that's considered to be a new Asian center for the United States military. I believe it's going to be replacing some of the bases in Okinawa, which are so unwanted by the Japanese. So that the North Koreans can feel relaxed to some extent, that if the United States were to sign a peace agreement with North Korea, and if they were to not build this new complex in South Korea, military complex, which is a staging complex for interventions, including potentially against the North, then that would go 99% of the way to alleviating the problem of the Korean Peninsula. So it's what we do, not what the North Koreans do or any other country does. It's what we do, we as the United States, and we as citizens of the United States do. That's what's important, that we stop our belligerence, that we extend a hand, that we make reparations for killing 5 million Koreans and destroying virtually the entire infrastructure of Korea in a 3-year period. That we would say we are sorry. We are sorry that we intervened into the autonomy of the Korean people. We are sorry that we didn't honor the wishes of the Korean people to have their own independent country based on whatever model they wanted. Historically, Korea had never invaded anybody. One of the ironies coming out of the World War II, one of the ironies is that the country that was the most imperial in Asia, Japan, the country that was most imperial during World War II and most of the first part of the 20th century, became our staging base in Asia. And Korea, who had never invaded any country, but had always been the object of interventions, they became divided. It is one of the twisted ironies of the 20th century. The one country that had never invaded anybody got permanently divided against their will. And the country that was most imperialistic became the base for capitalism and the base for most of our military in Asia, Japan.